Shaquille O'Neal once said one of the roughest players in the NBA to play against was Antonio Davis, a man who carved out his career relying on his physicality and defense, thriving on shutting down other big men and rebounding in bunches, starting his career with the Indiana Pacers as the team's sixth man, forming a duo with Dale Davis called the Davis Boys that no team wanted to mess with, as they were physical and going to foul you hard as well as always playing hard, with Antonio Davis helping the Indiana Pacers make 4 conference finals appearances before getting traded to the Toronto Raptors, where he put together his best personal seasons, starring as the second option to Vince Carter, helping the Raptors make their first playoff appearance in franchise history upon his arrival, and even became an NBA All-Star and started in the game. Then bouncing around to end his career, starting till the end, providing veteran presence and grit to young teams that needed it, in particular with the Chicago Bulls. This is a look back on Antonio Davis's career. Antonio Davis was born and raised in Oakland, California, picking up the game of basketball, going on to play at McClemens High School, having the height and athleticism drawing college coaches' interests, ultimately deciding to go to UTEP to play as college basketball for Hall of Fame head coach Don Haskins, as Haskins was the only coach to pitch him on playing defense and not offense, as the defensive side of the ball was going to get him to the next level. Davis was joining a UTEP team that was coming off a couple NCAA tournament appearances, with its most notable player being Tim Hardaway in his sophomore season. Since the Miners were a solid team, Davis was not given a lot of playing time right away his freshman year, only managing 8.6 minutes, 1.3 points, and 1.8 rebounds. For a UTEP team that went 25-7, winning the WAC regular season championship and made the NCAA tournament as the 7 seed. In the dance, the Miners defeated Sean Elliott in Arizona round 1 before falling round 2 to the 2-seeded Iowa, as UTEP had pushed the Hawkeyes the distance before Iowa won behind 7 future NBA players. Davis over the tournament run saw even less action and hardly played in both games. Entering next year with players graduating, Antonio Davis stepped into a larger role his sophomore season, becoming the team's starter, averaging 9.3 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks, helping UTEP have another solid season going 23-10, making the NCAA tournament as the A seed, where UTEP got bounced round 1 to Mark Bryant and Seton Hall, as Davis missed the game with injury, hurting UTEP's chances. Antonio Davis's junior year kept taking on more responsibilities, as he was developing, becoming the second leading scorer on the team to Hardaway, and led the way in rebounding, averaging 14.3 points and 8 rebounds, making the all-conference team, guiding UTEP to a 26-7 record, winning the WAC tournament, making the NCAA dance as the 7 seed. Round 1, UTEP took care of business against LSU, headed by Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, as Davis recorded 13 points and 9 rebounds, before getting trounced round 2 by 2-seeded Indiana, as Davis struggled to get going, putting up 6 points and 7 rebounds. Tim Hardaway had graduated after the year, and Davis, heading into his senior year, saw a dip in his scoring as a result of not getting as many easy looks as he did playing alongside Hardaway, as Antonio Davis averaged 10.8 points and 7.6 rebounds, making his second all-conference team. But despite the departure of Hardaway, Davis's impact was felt as he kept UTEP a tournament-caliber team, finishing the season 21-11, making the dance after winning the conference tournament, where UTEP as the 11th seed pushed Minnesota the distance before losing late 64-61 to a talented Minnesota team with 6 future NBA players. Against Minnesota, Davis had ended his college career strong, posting a double-double with 12 points and 11 rebounds. Heading into the NBA draft, Antonio Davis was looked at having a high-level NBA defensive capability and rebounding, but not so polished of an offensive game, making most teams view him as a project and a later pick. In the 1990 NBA draft in the second round with the 45th overall pick, Antonio Davis was selected by the Indiana Pacers. Most people would go on to compete and try to make the NBA team, but Davis knew he was still raw and needed to develop as a player, deciding to go play overseas to make sure when he was ready he would have an impact at the NBA level in the future. Antonio Davis joined Panathinaikos in the Greek League, and Davis took on a large role, becoming the team's best players for his 2 seasons there, and was the league's top rebounder in his second season with 14.6 rebounds per game. Then going on to join Philips Milano in the Italian League, who he had helped win the FIBA Korak Cup, looking like an NBA caliber player. After 3 strong seasons overseas, Antonio Davis returned stateside, signing a contract with the Indiana Pacers. Davis was joining a Pacers team who were coming off several first-round exits, with the team being led by Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, and Dale Davis. Antonio Davis became the Pacers' backup power forward to Dale Davis and often spent time on the floor with him, creating a physical presence for the years to come. Antonio Davis's rookie year averaged 7.7 points and was second on the team in rebounding at 6.2. The addition of Antonio Davis was one of the several things going well for the Pacers this season, as he had brought a new physical defensive presence to the team, forming the Davis Boys duo. The others included trading for Derek McKee in the offseason, helping with the tough defensive identity, and lastly, Rick Smits was starting to become one of the better big men in the NBA. The Pacers ended the season going 47-35, making the playoffs the 5 seed. Round 1, the Pacers faced the Orlando Magic, headed by Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway, Dennis Scott, and Nick Anderson. The Pacers entered as underdogs, but hanged around late Game 1 against Orlando as Miller was starting to look like a superstar caliber player, where the Pacers would win late when Byron Scott hit a 3 with 2 seconds remaining to win the game. Game 2, the Pacers won as well in a close one as Reggie Miller got hot again, before the Pacers stunned the Magic, sweeping them comfortably out of the playoffs in Game 3. Round 2, the Pacers entered as underdogs again, meeting the 1-seeded Atlanta Hawks with Danny Manning, Kevin Willis, and Mookie Blaylock. The Pacers kept the hot start going Game 1 as they defeated the Hawks, as Antonio Davis was the second leading scorer and rebounder on the team at 15 points and 6 rebounds. The Pacers dropped the next game before surprising again, jumping out to a 2-1 lead as Rick Smits led the way in Game 3. The Pacers proceeded to win Game 4 convincingly, needing one more win to advance to the next round, with Davis again coming off the bench to be the team's second leading scorer behind Miller with 17 points. And in Game 6, the Pacers got that win they needed behind a Smits performance. The Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals met their budding rivals, the New York Knicks, with Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Anthony Mason, and Charles Oakley. The series started out with the home court playing a big factor, with the series tied up after Game 4. Antonio's best game through the first 4 games was Game 3, as he led the game in rebounds with 10. Game 5, the Knicks went up early before Reggie Miller took over, being encouraged by Spike Lee's antics, resulting in a Pacers win. The Pacers only needed one more win to make it into the NBA Finals, headed back home for Game 6. But the Pacers faltered, dropping Game 6 at home as Starks played well. Game 7 was a tight one back in New York as Miller and Ewing went back and forth before the Knicks pulled away just at the end on an Ewing dunk, sending the Pacers home. Though a disappointing end to the season, the Pacers had put the league on notice moving forward. Antonio Davis, on the run to the Eastern Conference Finals, improved upon his regular season form, averaging 8.4 points and 6.6 rebounds. In the offseason, the Pacers realized they had a competitor and contender and made a move for Mark Jackson to bolster the team's expectations entering the next season. Davis, his second year in the NBA, was performing at the same level and role when healthy, as he would battle injuries this season, playing in 44 games, averaging 7.6 points and 6.4 rebounds, as the Pacers kept improving, going 52-30, getting the 2 seed, facing the Atlanta Hawks round 1, who now were headed by Steve Smith and Mookie Blaylock, where the Pacers took care of business, sweeping the Hawks out of the playoffs as Reggie Miller carried the team. Round 2, the Pacers met their foe in the New York Knicks. Game 1 was an all-time classic. The game was a physical one, highlighted by Derek Harper's flagrant foul on Antonio Davis that resulted in a shoving match and the two being ejected. The Pacers over the game were barely hanging in thanks to a big performance from Rick Smits, but as the Pacers trailed, Reggie Miller pulled off the improbable, scoring 8 points in 9 seconds, stealing Game 1. The Pacers, riding the momentum, would go on to win 2 of the next 3 games, going up 3-1 thanks to Smits and Miller. Game 5 was a hard-fought contest throughout as the Pacers held the lead late by 1 on looking at the verge of victory, but Patrick Ewing proceeded to extend the series, hitting a game winner with 1.8 seconds remaining. Game 6 was back in Indiana, however the Pacers struggled as Patrick Ewing forced the Game 7. Game 7 was a tightly contested one with Ewing and Miller again trading blows. The Pacers held the lead late by 1, yet the Knicks had the ball and went to Patrick Ewing in the clutch moment again, in a similar situation to Game 5. This time though, Ewing stunningly missed the shot and the Pacers were on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Awaiting them were the Orlando Magic, who had improved since their last playoff matchup with the addition of Horace Grant and the growth of its young core. The Magic jumped out to a 2-0 lead as Shaq was difficult for Smits to handle, but Indiana bounced back Game 3 with Antonio Davis leading the game with 10 rebounds. Game 4 was a close one as the Pacers were managing to slow down Shaq, who was in foul trouble, and the final minute of the game was wild with 4 lead changes. Brian Shaw started things off hitting a 3, and as per usual in the clutch moments, the Pacers went to Reggie Miller, who hit a 3 with 5.2 seconds left. Then Penny Hardaway hit a contested 3, giving the Magic the lead with 1.3 seconds left. The Pacers this time in the clutch went a different route than normal, throwing the ball into Rick Smits, who would pump fake and hit the buzzer beater, tying the series up, going down as the Memorial Day miracle. Game 5, Shaq did not get in foul trouble, guiding the Magic to a victory. In Game 6, the Pacers blew out the Magic behind Reggie Miller's play, and in Game 7, the Magic responded by blowing out the Pacers, sending them home. Antonio Davis, over the playoff run back to the conference finals, played slightly less minutes coming off an injury-riddled season, averaging 5.9 points and 5.7 rebounds. Next season, Davis was back and healthy, becoming Indiana's 6th man, averaging 8.8 points and 6.1 rebounds, helping the Pacers go 52-30, entering the playoffs to the 3 seed, again meeting the Atlanta Hawks round 1. The Pacers would have entered this series as favorites, but Miller was out with an eye injury, and Steve Smith elevated his play this series, smelling blood in the water with Miller out, forcing the series to go to a Game 5. With the season on the line, Miller returned for Game 5, and Reggie Miller played great, not seeming to be bothered by the injury. But the Hawks still hanged around and held the lead throughout, finishing the Pacers off as Reggie Miller missed the buzzer beater, stunning the Pacers round 1. Antonio Davis against the Hawks put together a solid series, averaging 7.8 points and 6.2 rebounds. The Pacers the following season found themselves in a funk still after the playoff loss and Smith's missing time with injury. With the team struggling, the Pacers made a move for the future, trading away Mark Jackson to the Nuggets for Jalen Rose. Antonio Davis, throughout the struggles, took on a larger role and even started 28 games, averaging 10.5 points and 7.3 rebounds. But Davis stepping up was not enough as the Pacers went 39-43, missing the playoffs. In the offseason, the Pacers knew they had to mix things up, so they did, bringing in Larry Bird to coach the team and trading back for Mark Jackson to be the point guard again, and trading for Chris Mullin to be the team's new small forward as McKee struggled to play consistently with injuries moving forward. Antonio Davis, through the changes, continued as the Pacers' 6th man, averaging 9.6 points and 6.8 rebounds, for a healthy Pacers team that bounced back with the offseason moves to go 58-24, entering the playoffs as the 3 seed, meeting Shawn Kemp, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and the Cleveland Cavaliers round 1. Shawn Kemp would give the Pacers fits throughout the series, looking like the best player on the court, but Indiana was a deeper team, winning the series comfortably 3-1. Round 2, the Pacers met the New York Knicks, who had changed since their last playoff matchups. His initial core was aging, and the team was now headed by Allen Houston and Larry Johnson. With the series not being as close as the prior years, as the Pacers looked in command from the get-go, advancing 4-1 behind Reggie Miller. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pacers faced the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. The Bulls jumped out to a strong start, winning the first 2 games behind big games from Jordan. Even though Antonio Davis was out-rebounding Rodman in the early parts, in particular in Game 1 with 10 rebounds. Game 3 was back in Indiana as the team thrived off the home court, winning late thanks to none other than Reggie Miller and Antonio Davis again leading the way in rebounds with 12. Game 4 was a tight one, with the Pacers seeming to have lost the game as Pippen went to the free throw line to put the game out of reach. But Pippen surprisingly missed both, giving the Pacers a chance, and a chance was all Reggie Miller needed as he shoved off Jordan, hitting the shot with 0.7 seconds left to take the lead. But Larry Bird, as did most, knew the game wasn't over with Jordan on the other team, where Michael Jordan would get the final shot off with it looking like it was going to fall, but just missed, seeing the series tied up. Back in Chicago, the Bulls handled the Pacers, going up 3-2. Game 6, the Pacers extended the series. They won late in a free throw from Travis Best and a defensive stop on Jordan from Derek McKee. Game 7, the Pacers went up early in the first part before Jordan pulled the Bulls back into the game. Early parts of the fourth, it looked like the Pacers were going to dethrone the Bulls. Then all of a sudden, the Bulls went on a run to finish the game off, sending the Pacers packing. Antonio Davis played well over this series despite the loss, but is most remembered for continuing his back and forth with Rodman, which was a regular thing throughout the careers for the two of them to do. Davis, over the postseason run to another Eastern Conference Finals appearance, averaged 9.2 points and 6.8 rebounds. Next season, Antonio Davis continued with the same role for the Pacers, averaging 9.4 points and 7 rebounds to the team's sixth man, helping the Pacers go 33-17 in the lockout-shortened year, making the playoffs the 2 seed. Round 1, the Pacers played the Milwaukee Bucks with Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson and Sam Cassell, and the Pacers managed to sweep the Bucks 3-0, but it had its scares, barely winning Game 2 thanks to a late tip-in from Dale Davis. Round 2, the Pacers matched up against the 76ers with Allen Iverson, where Allen Iverson played phenomenal over the series, making games close, but he lacked a supporting cast as the Pacers swept the 76ers. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pacers met the New York Knicks, who had improved since their prior playoff series, adding Latrell Sprewell and Marcus Camby. The Pacers dropped Game 1 at home, despite Davis coming off the bench for 17 points and 7 rebounds, before the Pacers tied the series up as Patrick Ewing missed a wide-open jump shot at the buzzer Game 2. Game 3, it looked as though the Pacers were going to take back control of the series, being up 3 late. Then all of a sudden, Larry Johnson got fouled in a 3-pointer by Antonio Davis, hitting the shot and had won the Knicks the game on a 4-point play. The Pacers bounced back, winning Game 4 thanks to the bench unit with Jalen Rose and Antonio Davis, who recorded 16 points and 8 rebounds. But they went on to drop the next 2 games again, being sent home in the Eastern Conference Finals. Antonio Davis was again a pivotal part for another conference finals appearance for the Pacers, again averaging 7.9 points and 7.1 rebounds, but his postseason was most forgotten about and remembered for his foul on the 4-point play. After spending 6 seasons in Indiana as the 6th man, Antonio Davis was seeking more minutes entering next season, and the Pacers obliged by trading him away. Antonio Davis was traded by the Indiana Pacers to the Toronto Raptors for the 5th overall pick in the draft that became Jonathan Bender. Davis was joining the Raptors team led by the young duo of Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady. Antonio Davis stepped in to be the team's starting center, going on to average 11.5 points, 8.8 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks, providing a much-needed toughness to a Raptors team that would make the playoffs for the first time in franchise history after Davis's addition, after going 45-37, getting a 6th seed, creating a matchup against the team who had sent Antonio Davis home the prior season in the playoffs in the New York Knicks. The Raptors found themselves in an early 2-0 hole after a game winner from Latrell Sprewell. Trying to avoid the 3-game sweep, Antonio Davis sparked a comeback, leading the team in scoring with 18 points and grabbed 12 rebounds. However, his best effort was not enough as the Knicks pulled away late, sweeping the Raptors. Antonio Davis over the series averaged 13 points, 8.3 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks. In the offseason, the Raptors would make a move they would go on to regret, trading away Tracy McGrady. And the next season, without McGrady, Davis found a bigger role within the team, becoming the Raptors' second leading scorer and shot blocker with 13.7 points and 1.9 blocks, while leading the team in rebounds with 10.1, all while playing for a Raptors team that was playing well again, helping Antonio Davis make the NBA All-Star team. And in the All-Star game, Antonio Davis would get the start and did what he does best, grabbing 9 rebounds and scoring 8 points. After the All-Star break, the Raptors kept form, with Vince Carter looking like a superstar, going 47-35, making the playoffs the 5 seed, meeting the team who had knocked them out the prior year in the New York Knicks round 1. They weren't the same team though, as they no longer had Patrick Ewing and Larry Johnson was out injured, creating a competitive series, seeing the Raptors and Knicks split the first 4 games in the best-of-5 series, as Antonio Davis' best game was Game 3, leading the team with 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks. In Game 5, it would be a close one before the Raptors pulled away late, winning the game behind Vince Carter, with Davis doing his part, scoring 14 points and being the leading rebounder with 12 rebounds. Round 2 brought the 1-seeded Philadelphia 76ers with Allen Iverson and Dikembe Mutombo. Game 1 was a close one throughout, with Raptors stealing it late as Vince Carter hit 2 free throws and the 76ers missed the game-tying 3-pointer. And to no surprise, the leading rebounder of the game was Davis with 12. Davis followed up a good Game 1 with an even better Game 2, scoring 19 points and grabbing 10 rebounds. But the person who had the best Game 2 was Iverson, as he went off for 54 points, winning the game for Philly. Game 3, Vince Carter responded for the Raptors with a 50-point game of his own, winning the game as Davis aided him with 20 points and 14 rebounds. The series was looking to be in favor of the Raptors after the strong start, but Iverson would end up carrying the 76ers the next 2 games, going up 3-2 after another 50 ball. Game 6, the Raptors bounced back at home behind the 1-2 punch of Carter and Davis. Game 7 would be back in fourth battle, with Antonio Davis being the leading scorer, putting up 23 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks. The Raptors found themselves trailing late into the game by 1, but had the ball for the final possession after an Antonio Davis rebound. Vince Carter would get a look off for the final shot, but it was all iron, sending the Raptors home. Antonio Davis was a large part of the Raptors' postseason success, playing through a strained tricep muscle to average 16.4 points, 11.1 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks. Next season, Antonio Davis improved upon the strong season form prior to average 14.5 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks. The Raptors, however, this season regressed, missing Vince Carter throughout parts with an injury to go 42-40, making the playoffs the 7th seed to face the Detroit Pistons with Jerry Stackhouse and Ben Wallace. The Raptors entered the series without Carter, who was injured, making them big underdogs, giving what appeared to be an easy series to Detroit, who went up 2-0 right away. Once the series shifted to Toronto, things changed as Antonio Davis spurred the Raptors to 2 victories, tying up the series, with Game 3 being Davis's best performance as he went for 30 points and 8 rebounds, helping create a do-or-die Game 5. Game 5, Toronto hanged around as Jerry Stackhouse was cold from the floor, but the Pistons would ultimately prevail as Corliss Williamson picked up the slack, sending Toronto home packing. Antonio Davis over the series was the Raptors' leader without Carter, posting averages of 17 points, 10.6 rebounds, helping the Raptors almost pull off the upset. In the offseason, Antonio Davis would suit up for Team USA to compete at the FIBA World Cup. However, this would go down as one of the most disappointing USA basketball teams, being the first USA team to lose with having NBA players on the roster, dropping to Manu Ginobili in Argentina, then losing to Peja Stojakovic in Yugoslavia, not even medaling at the World Cup. The following season for the Raptors, injury problems continued as Carter missed time still, and it was not just Carter this season as Davis also missed time, suiting up for only 53 games, averaging 13.9 points, 8.2 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks, when healthy. With the Raptors' 2 best players injured, they would struggle, going 24-58, missing the playoffs. However, any bad season brings a high draft pick, and the Raptors took Chris Bosh. Davis entered the season with trade rumors swirling as a result in order to free up playing time for Bosh, and after 15 games, Antonio Davis was on the move. Antonio Davis was traded by the Toronto Raptors with Chris Jeffries, Jerome Williams, to the Chicago Bulls for Lonnie Baxter, Danielle Marshall, and Jalen Rose. Davis was wanted by the Bulls to bring a veteran presence to a young team, in particular to the bigs in Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry, and sometimes including the young guard duo of Jamal Crawford and Kirk Hinrich as well. Davis on the court stepped into the starting lineup to average 8.9 points and 8.4 rebounds this season between Toronto and Chicago, all the while the Bulls were rebuilding, going 23-59, missing the playoffs. Entering the NBA draft, the Bulls had 2 high picks and would take Ben Gordon and Luol Deng, both of whom would drastically improve the team. Meanwhile, trading away Crawford in the offseason to create playing time for its draft picks. With the new core and the young guys behind Davis, Antonio Davis ended up playing less minutes this season, similar to that of the average 6th man, while still starting, averaging 7 points and 5.9 rebounds. Meanwhile, the offseason moves had paid off, and the Bulls were playoff bound for the first time since Jordan's departure, going 47-35, finishing with the 4 seed, getting a series against the Washington Wizards with Gilbert Arenas, Larry Hughes, and Anton Jamison. The Bulls entered the series as underdogs, missing Eddie Curry and Luol Deng with injury. However, they would look like anything but underdogs, going up 2-0 thanks to standout games from Ben Gordon and Kirk Hinrich. Even Davis chipped in Game 2, being the Bulls' second leading scorer with 18. When the series shifted to Washington, the momentum changed as the Wizards won both of their games, tying up the series as Arenas sparked the team. Back in Chicago for Game 5, the Wizards kept in control, looking like they were going on to win the game comfortably. The Bulls creeped back into the game from down 22, but were still down 10 with 40 seconds remaining. Then all of a sudden, the Bulls got hot, hitting multiple threes headed by Gennaro Pargo, as the Wizards kept missing free throws, with the Bulls capping off the comeback as Gennaro Pargo hit a 3 with 5.2 seconds remaining to tie up the game. But the miraculous comeback would be for naught as Arenas went on to hit the buzzer beater the following possession, seeing the Bulls go down 3-2. Game 6 was a close one again at the end before miscommunication on the inbound pass resulted in a bad turnover and a basket for the Wizards, helping the Wizards go on to win the game in the series. Antonio Davis over the series averaged 9.5 points and 6.8 rebounds, playing well, providing a much-needed defense and veteran presence for the young team. In the summer, Antonio Davis would be elected as the president of the NBA Players Association, with Davis having been inactive within the Players Association's meetings prior to his election for several years, as the players liked him for representing the non-stars at the end of the bench. Entering next season, Antonio Davis found himself on the move as the Bulls wanted to clear playing time for Tyson Chandler. Antonio Davis was traded by the Chicago Bulls with Eddie Curry and a future pick that became Wilson Chandler to the New York Knicks for Jermaine Jackson, Mike Sweetney, Tim Thomas, and 4 draft picks that became LaMarcus Aldridge, Joakim Noah, Kryllo Fesenko, and John Brockman. Davis was joining a struggling Knicks team looking for his veteran presence that he brought Chicago, with the Knicks at the time being led by the duo of Stephon Marbury and Jamal Crawford. Antonio Davis became the Knicks' starting power forward this season, looking as though he was starting to regress with age. Davis, in his time in New York this season, unfortunately is most remembered for an incident during a Bulls-Knicks game mid-year. Antonio Davis would go into the stands to check on his wife, who was in an altercation with a fan after telling him to stop using inappropriate words around her kid. Nothing would happen between everyone after Davis stepped in, but he got ejected. The public opinion after the game seemed to sway in the favor of Davis, but he would end up getting suspended for 5 games for leaving the bench. And an additional fun fact, the fan involved in the incident was the son of the campaign manager for Obama. After serving the suspension, Davis was back to the starting lineup, trying to do his part for a Knicks team that was struggling, before the Knicks decided to move on from Antonio Davis as Jalen Rose became available. Antonio Davis was traded by the New York Knicks to the Toronto Raptors for Jalen Rose and a future pick that became Ronaldo Balkman. Davis was back to where he found his personal season successes, stepping into the starting lineup to be the team's power forward alongside Chris Bosh at center. 8 games in, though, Antonio Davis suffered a back injury that would end his season, resulting in the Raptors deciding to waive him. Antonio Davis, between New York and Toronto, played in 44 games this year, averaging 4.9 points and 4.7 rebounds. After the injury, Antonio Davis decided to call it a career, retiring after 13 years in the NBA, averaging 10 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 1 block over his career. Antonio Davis's career will be remembered for being a grinder and a physical force not to mess with, grabbing rebounds in bunches and playing elite defense, shutting down some of the best big men in the league. Starring at Indiana at the beginning of his career being the team's 6th man, forming a duo that nobody wanted to mess with, and Dale Davis forming the Davis Boys, helping Indiana make 4 conference finals appearances, before being traded to the Raptors, where he would have his best career years starting alongside Carter, helping the Raptors make their first playoff appearance in franchise history upon his addition to the team, and even became an all-star starter, later going on to end his career bouncing around, providing his veteran leadership and toughness, in particular with the Bulls. Starting till the end of his career, Antonio Davis, simply put, was a hard worker and a force down low. Thanks for watching this video on Antonio Davis's career. If you have any other players in the future you want to see me do, leave them in the comments below and I may not decide to do them. Who knows? Thanks again for watching. This has been Skid Denver.